welcome to Hedgehog Hollow. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use the Deco Art Transfer Gel and some of the mixed media foils that Thermoweb have. I've had a few sitting in my stash and I'm going to be using this lovely hexagon stencil to show you how to use it. I'm also going to show you how to use ultra thick embossing powder or ultra thick embossing enamel to create the sentiments like this one. So it's just plain cardstock, but we can create this lovely bezeled edge on them as well. So let's get started. So I'm using one of the parts of this 3-part stencil from Honeybee Stamps. I'm using the most open piece. There's this slightly more closed one and then there's the middle piece. So you can make a 3D honeycomb. I've already taken that down on top of a piece of Bristol Smooth, and I got my spatula here, and this is the Deco Art Transfer Gel. So you put this on, and I didn't actually read the bottle till afterwards, but you put this on, you leave it for an hour or so until it's clear, and then after that it's set, you can put then the foil on either through a laminator or through a MINC machine, which is what I'm going to use, and we'll get to that later. So I'm going to spread it all over. I'm not going to do an all over piece on the whole thing, and you'll see I leave some open bits. I've got some close-up photos of those open pieces to look at later on as well, but I'm sort of doing it in a rough arc. So I'm covering up that left side and I'm arcing round to leave some more open pieces on that right side. You want to go across and scrape off any excess, and I just pop that back in the pot. Think of it as though you're icing a cake. Now, this is the mixed media transfer foil. I've chosen a couple of different colours here. These are the ones they sent me. Some antique gold, new penny, vintage tin. We've got patina and that other gold there as well. Now, I thought I would end up using the copper, but you'll see later on I made a different choice. Now, whilst the gel is still wet, you're going to want to take that stencil off, because if it dries while it's on there, it's going to be quite tricky to get off. So I'm going to peel off that stencil, and I'm then just going to pop it to the side to dry. I've got this down with some purple painter's tape. I'll link that up for you. And I'm also using my Gessobord again. All those links will be below the video for you. So whilst that's drying, I've got a Teflon sheet here. I've cut out the Hugs die, and I'm just going to put some Versamark all over it. I've also got some tweezers here as well. You'll be needing those too. And I'm going to be applying some ultra thick embossing enamel on the top, and that's going to give us that lovely 3D sentiment that I talked about earlier. So I have my tidy tray here. I'm just going to tip the UTEE or ultra thick embossing enamel or ultra thick embossing powder. It comes by a few different names. I'm going to tip that over and then heat it with my Wagner heat tool. And then we're going to add a couple of layers up. You can build it up probably on something this fairly delicate. You wouldn't want more than 2 or 3 layers. On some surfaces I can do 4, 5 or even 6. So I'm going to use my Wagner heat tool, as I said, to heat this up. It will melt and it will become clear. I'm holding it down using the tweezers there, and the reason I use tweezers, they've got a lovely fine nose point on them. They're great for crafting. I will link those ones up. I've been through lots of different types, and these are by far the best. They don't cut into that ultra thick embossing enamel. They just seem to pinch it nice and lightly, and you don't notice any real sort of divots or anything in there. So you'll know that this is done. It'll start to bubble and go clear. You'll find your first layer will probably be patchy, so don't worry about that. You will need to heat this a little bit more than regular embossing powder. The crystals are much bigger, more like grains of sugar than the fine dust you're used to working with. And I do it on the non-stick mat because there I can just pick it up once it's done. So I'm going to go back in with the Versamark, and again I'm going to sticky it all up, and I'm going to add the UTEE on there. So once you've done the Versamark, you're going to add another layer of the UTEE. So to do that, I just use the tweezers to pick it up, and I'm dipping it into the UTEE tray that's still in the tidy tray. I'm sorry I forgot to bring that down onto my workspace, but I'm just dipping it in, adding that extra coat, and you'll see in just a second here, now it's got those crystals all over it. So again, it looks like it's coating the sugar. I'm going to heat it up with my Wagner. This time it's going to go a bit quicker because my Wagner's already hot, and I'm going to start creating that piece. Now, if a bit sort of squidges out or just goes off to the side, you can reheat this and fix it really easily. Before you stop heating it, do pick it up with the tweezers like I'm about to do here, so that it comes off the sheet. Otherwise, you'll get little droplets that will form warm on some of those edges, but as long as you pick it up, you'll be absolutely fine. Now, just before I talk about this, in the top right hand corner is my MINC machine, and right now, when I started, it was flashing red, it's now green. That's the sign, if you're using a MINC machine, that it's ready to go, and I tend to do things on the highest settings rather than on some of those lower ones. Now, I'm going to take this piece. I did leave it a little bit more than an hour, and I ended up using my Ranger Heat It tool just to really finish it off. And after playing around, I decided I wanted to go with this old gold. I like that muted colour of gold. I think it's nice and warm. And I thought it was perfect for the honeycomb pattern. And you're going to pat that on. Don't worry if you get any creases and things on. You'll see mine is not perfect. It will likely cling when you start pressing it down. And I'm popping it in one of these transfer pages. You can use a piece of parchment paper and your laminator on its highest setting. That would work too. But I happen to have a MINC, so that worked perfectly. And I do like this mini MINC. I find I use it a lot. So I'm going to run this through, and again, it will run it through just like a laminator. And out the other side will come my lovely foiled piece, and we'll have that extra piece of sort of spare foil once we've taken those honeycombs off. Now, do keep those pieces. You can use them for little bits of foiling. You can use them for all sorts of things, and I really do use up every last little bit of foil. I never throw a small bit away. They're always useful. It's great if you want to do rainbow pieces or you need to do a quick touch up. And you can see there how you can really see that honeycomb pattern now that it has stuck on. So the MINC probably takes maybe 30 to 45 seconds to run through. You can get a bigger MINC. This is, say, the mini one, and you can buy the different sizes of transfer sheets up to some quite large ones depending on what your project is. I haven't tried a laminator, but it does say on the packet you can use a laminator, so I'm sure if that's what you had in your stash, then you could use that as well. And you can use these transfer sheets, these clear ones that I put mine through instead of parchment paper, in your laminator. I watched someone do that on a video the other day, so that would work absolutely fine. Now, once you're done, you just open this piece up, as you can see I'm about to do, and it will sometimes pull the foil with it, otherwise just very gently peel away the foil. As I say, that foil is fine, we'll keep that for a future project, but you can see there how lovely that looks. I think it's really, really pretty. I'm really pleased with how that came out. Now, we're ready to assemble our card. I've got half a piece of Neenah Solar White cut in half lengthways. I've got a piece of Lawn Fawn Black Licorice cardstock in 5 1/4 by 4, and then my other Bristol piece is 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So I go down 1/4 of an inch each time, which gives me a nice matting size. As always, I'm going to stick everything down using my Tonic Funky Tape Runner. If you haven't seen me use this before, I'll link up in the right hand corner my adhesives video just for my pick of adhesives and why I choose each one. This is really inexpensive tape run and really strong. It's from Tonic, which is a great brand, and I've used this long before I ever worked with Tonic. Using the same to put down the Bristol Smooth. You could use a piece of Neenah. I just find the Bristol Smooth is a little bit more rugged. It's entirely up to you. There's no major differences in there. It's just my personal preference there. The hugs I'm going to stick down using the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. You could use the Thermoweb mixed media adhesive. That works really well, just small dots. You could also use your micro brushes to apply it. I was just dabbing it on, and you'll see in a second how I end up sort of giving some extra pressure on there. So you can use that. You could use some glossy accents if you had that. There's a few different options for sticking these things down. And I'm using my fingers. I probably should have used my tweezers if I'd have been thinking things through, but I just happen to use my fingers, which are some of the best tools I think we have. Now, when something like these small sentiments, I find they're a little bit tricky to put down, the first thing I always try is the wallpaper roller. And that does work on most things, but I did find here I need a little bit of extra pressure. The wallpaper roller is great because you won't squidge the glue out too much, you don't make a mess, and it doesn't sort of move around as some things do. Now, when I do need that extra pressure, I grab my Big Shot plates, and you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just putting it in the normal sandwich. You could run it through your Big Shot, but some of that enamel would get a bit squished. I just leave it there for a couple of minutes and use a bit of hand pressure. Now, for my other sentiment, I'm using The World Needs More because I think it's great, and it's supposed to be kindness, but I thought The World Needs More Hugs is also also very appropriate. So I stamped that out on a piece of Neenah Solar White using my favourite things hybrid black, as I always do, and I'm going to stick that on using a foam strip. These are the strips that I use for shaker cards. I just love the way they give dimension, and they're nice and thin to pop on the back of a sentiment. Now you can see I also have a little bit of forgiveness with those. If you give it a twist and a bit of a peel, you'll be able to reposition it into the right place, and it didn't do any damage. Now I'm going to add some Ranger black enamel accents. I really like how they look. And you can see that I still wasn't happy with the placement of that sentiment. So I went down and I actually just made it flat. It was too much with the enamel. But that's card making, it's a process, and that was absolutely fine. I'm really happy with the finished result. I'll show you some pictures in just a moment. So as I say, I decided to go with the Ranger black enamel accents. I didn't have the Nuvo one in black, so I find they always are gummed up on me. I use the Tonic craft pick, and then I start it off on the back of my hand before I do anything else. So at the minute I'm just giving it a wiggle with the craft pick, and then I'm just putting it on the back of my hand ready to go. That stops me getting any splodges. If ever I was going to give you a tip to work with glitter glues and stickles and Nuvo drops and all those things, is start on the back of your hand, and it will stop you getting those sort of airy splutters that we often get when we start. So I started to fill in some of those open honeycombs on the edges there, just to give it that little bit of extra interest and to tie in the black enamel that we'd put on that Hugs sentiment. So I think there's lots of techniques in this card, and I think you could adapt lots of them as well. Here's the finished card. You can see that gorgeous sheen in there as well. I love how clean and elegant it is. I think it's a very modern looking card, but again, that foil could be used for so many things. Here you can see the die that we started with and how great that comes out as well. And now I'm going to show you a close-up of that hug so you can see how great that enamel looks. Isn't that awesome how we've got those depths and all that shine in there? And I just think it looks like a really fun technique to use on more things. I also thought I would show you how that transfer gel comes out and how lovely the foil hits in all of those grooves. Do hit those subscribe buttons that are now on your screen. All of these pictures will be on the Hedgehog Hollow blog. All the links are below the video. Hit the downward arrow or click the show me more button depending what device you're looking on. Do also hit that subscribe button, and I will see you again very soon. Happy stamping. Bye.